to talk about ROSCON? I figured that would be
the topic. ROSCON. Yes. It was a lot of fun. Definitely encourage you guys to go. Next year it's supposed to be in North America. We don't know yet where, but if you have the opportunity, it's fun to meet people and to see what's going on. Definitely when these videos come out, it's also good to watch the videos. Some of them you may not have a direct application for, but they're kind of interesting to see how other communities are using ROS. Give you an example, this one, there were a lot of health initiatives, hospitals and hospital robots, and they're working with a consortium, ROS Health, to do a number of tasks, but one of them is fleet management. And so they're working on an open source fleet management to use in the hospital to coordinate all the different robots. And that's something that definitely we could use to coordinate the different farm vehicles out in the field. So it's kind of fun to see how what other groups are doing and then how we might be able to apply that same technology into agriculture. Was anybody able to catch any of the live stream? Any comments on that?
as much as I could stay awake. Probably a couple hours a night. That was it.
Yeah. 12-hour time change is a bit much.
It's a bit, yeah. What were the, outside of the presentation that'll be posted online, who did you meet, or what was behind the scenes that we're not going to see online that was interesting, you know, outside, like the exhibit hall? Was there anything there that was kind of cool?
Yeah, a new kind of computer that's coming out from Qualcomm. I forgot the name of it. I think there was a talk on that or used that in there, but they had that one on demo. There's also just, you know, the random meeting people and seeing what they do. It's fun and interesting. Met with Lionel Robot and talked with him a little bit about what the future of that robot build looks like, and met with the ROS quality team. We had lunch there. So trying to make package quality more visible with static analysis and build reports, so we can kind of at least get some indicator of quality. Things are moving to ROS 2. That was another big kind of discussion. Where are people at and how do they want to move from one to the other? Security, commercialization.
So no outstanding conversations. Did you meet with Ricardo at all?
Yeah. Ricardo was there. He's doing great. He smart. He recorded a bunch of developer podcast lectures there, and he taught a class on that reinforced learning on the first day. They've did a couple changes on this ROSCON. They put in a workshop day and the day before, and then they did a split track. So those things are new for this year's ROSCON. The workshops were interesting. I went to the ROS ecosystem workshop, trying to understand what do we want to do with that, and how are the tools working for the ROS community. Do people like ROS answers and discourse, and some things we talked about, like Al mentioned, something like Stack Overflow. They thought that since there are already tools out there to be able to handle questions and answering, it would be better to use something like Stack Overflow. But basically on how do you onboard people to ROS, that was a continued topic. It's kind of you're dealing with a lot of different topics all at once, but I think some good things came out of the session that we'll hear more about. Talk with the ROS Industrial guys out of Europe. They're doing great. It's a very fascinating kind of, I think they're the largest, obviously, consortium. And so trying to understand would it make sense for ROS Agriculture to form a consortium and then maybe go under ROS Industrial. And talked to Matt Robinson a little bit about that, but also talked with the guys from Europe. So we'll see how things go.
Matt Robinson was there? I thought he told me he wasn't.
No, no, I talked to him when I was in Texas, in San Antonio.
Oh, yeah. When were you
Yeah.
in San Antonio?
I don't know. Last year
Oh, long time ago.
when I was living in Austin. Yeah.
Cool. So what was the most fascinating thing you learned about ROS 2 while you were there?
Well, a lot of ROS 2 is over my head. So it's still pretty technical on most of the aspects. The speed and lightweight, obviously, is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think but I made a career, well, not a career change, but a career move recently. And so I'm going to be looking at part of my new job is to start looking at more at DDS and ROS 2 middleware, and specifically how, we're trying to help people understand that better at object computing here in St. Louis. And so, we have a lot of interest in ROS 2, and especially like I believe that a lot of what we've seen in ROS 1 is going to move into the embedded world using DDS. And there's definitely some issues of understanding. I think a lot of people who understand ROS 1 don't yet understand the details of DDS and how to best use it, and also how to use it in embedded software and why it might go there. So I think there's some pretty fascinating use cases that we've been discussing and that I've kind of seen lately. So I'm excited to see that change. I think ROS in general is going to kind of make an evolutionary step in the next 5 years. And, I'm excited to see it kind of become enabled in a lot of different devices that you can buy. So we're hoping to be a part of that and try to help companies get their DDS implementations onto ROS 2 devices, and like buy a camera and have it enabled with ROS 2 and all the features that come with that. I happen to
like a dream.
Yeah, like you plug in a camera and you get topics. Topics out.
I muted Walter. There's a little background noise there.
Oh. Oh yeah, he can't talk. But anyway, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I think I think other thing that I think is big is security. We've been talking to some people who security makes a big difference for, and there's a lot of aspects to security. We actually joined the security working group call today for ROS 2, and I was fully expecting it to be all about DDS security, but there's some other aspects that I hadn't considered, like intrusion detection. That was kind of one of the talking points today, is what to do about intrusion detection. So, sorry, my boys are
talking about intrusion detection.
Yeah, I got some intrusion right now. But anyway, I never considered that as far as security. I think there's a whole lot of things that now that ROS 2 is, and ROS in general is talking about, a product level quality. There's a lot of things that people haven't thought about, and it's that's what's fascinating to me is all these new doors that are opening. It's like, oh, well, did we ever think about how to deal with, somebody getting onto your ROS system and how to detect that and deal with it, and, how to ensure against them not doing anything malicious, you got a robot out mowing lawns or out plowing a field. The last thing you want is somebody to hop on there with the ROS publisher and send that right into a house or a highway or something, you know. So there's a lot of interesting things, and I think it's just going to make ROS better. I'm excited.
Yep. Security is a big aspect. There was some also to talk about going from pushing more of this stuff down. You said the microcontroller. So there's always that discussion of pushing intelligence down to the edge. And yeah. I did look at that, the micro ROS. I think that's really interesting project. Kind of followed that for the last couple of years, but I need to go through some of the tutorials that they presented this year at ROSCON, and then see where it's at and see if I can understand that.
I noticed that the what do you call it? Like the target hardware or the I forget the term, but you know, like the reference hardware, the board they suggest you buying to start out with micro ROS is not sold stateside. It's like you have to go to, it's like sold out, it's made out of Europe. Yeah. And so I was hoping for something that, you know, you could just go, I mean, you can't go out to Amazon and buy it, but it's like 3 times as much on Amazon. If you go to the website they have there, it's, forget, it's like 30 or 40 euros or something in that range. But it would be fascinating to buy one and kind of get that going.
Yeah, hopefully the target hardware will be those STM boards. We can get, yeah. It's the same thing that Hardware ROS was working on. Victor.
Yeah, I saw Accutronic was presenting, but they're not, I mean, they're no longer a company. So did you happen to meet any of those guys?
I talked with Victor and his brother actually, but they're doing security. So they're focused on like a consulting company with ROS security.
Did they happen to say, because I know the intellectual property was sold off to somebody, has that been made public yet, where that went?
I don't think so.
That would be interesting to know.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else from ROSCON that looked good?
The VxWorks presentation looked interesting. I think I caught most of that, but I'm supposed to be, the guy who presented, we're supposed to be talking to him sometime within the next couple of weeks. But that's definitely a change from doing ROS on standard operating systems to production quality RTOS. So I think that'll be interesting to review.
Okay. What did you think of that WebOS embedded?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting too. I don't know, their demonstration video was, you know, something left to be desired there, but it was interesting, at least the presentation by LG Electronics.
Yeah.
I mean, basically they took a Turtlebot and integrated a user interface on top of it, which is, I guess, is all right. It didn't really show me what they had done though, because you could put a little tablet with a smiley face and mount it on top of a Turtlebot and have it drive around, and you know, yeah. It would have been interesting to see a little bit more about what was underneath that demonstration.
more of that commercialization pathway of over-the-air updates and controlled releases and that whole thing. Yep.
Yeah, over the air is I think that's a tricky. Recently I was engaged in a project where we were looking at some ways to do complete system updates over there, and I didn't realize how challenging that could be, especially for full like Linux laptops and such.
Replace the whole OS on there.
Yeah. Oh, he's asking about your Docker.
Yep. Yep. What the status of the Docker?
Have you got the image on Docker Hub yet?
Yep.
Okay, so you can just pull it, and does it start up does it start everything up, or do you have to run some commands to get things going?
You have to run some commands to get things going. I'll show you. So this Docker build is a little bit, I mean, it is complicated. I got it from another place. Basically, it just took a Docker container that had the interface, the VNC interface, and then just put ROS on there. So may be able to pare that down to only the things that we need or want to use.
I was able to get X Windows working out of a container pretty well on a Linux platform, but I tried to use X Quartz on my Mac at work, and I have been having so much trouble getting that to work. So I can see an advantage of VNC in that case.
It's been pretty nice. You just point your web browser to it, and then you have your full computer. So this is on our GitHub under Ross Agriculture Tractor Sim Wiki. And so when you run this command, Docker run 6080 just maps the web port, and then Ross Agriculture Tractor Sim, it will go out to the Docker Hub and then download this image for you. And then to run the simulation, you just double click this icon, Ross Lawn Tractor, double click this icon, and then it will start your simulator for you. And then when you want to drive around, you can send it a 2D nav goal, and then it will drive to the location. And this is just using the standard move-based nav stack with the TEB planner, the local planner.
I'm pretty sure if you, I was looking at your command to run, I'm pretty sure if you just, instead of doing the port map, if you use the net, it's either -- or just, I think it's -- net space host. What that means is to use the host network. And so it essentially acts, it pretty much opens all the interfaces. It's not obviously as safe, but if you're just doing it on your own laptop, it kind of makes the network more accessible. In other words, if you have, say, some other container running a different, running some other ROS code, like what distribution is this? Is this melodic or
Kinetic?
It's kinetic. So I think most of the messages are compatible between kinetic and melodic, but let's say you wanted to run a second container with melodic, and you wanted to start porting things, or there's a Docker image for ROS1 bridge. You could run that as well. And if you did that, then use the -net host on both of them. You should be able to get the containers to talk to each other. So the benefit of that is it helps in your migration between different releases.
Okay. That's a good suggestion. Down here, you can run the tractor sim with this command, and the only thing the difference here is this this device dev input.
Huh.
This one will, if you plug in a joystick to your controller, to your computer, and then run this command, then you can double click this icon here on your desktop inside of the Docker container, and then it will start up Joy Node. And then you can drive the simulator around with your joystick. So this was just kind of like, what's the quickest, easiest way we can get people up and running with ROS? They can download this container, point their web browser, and then double click the ROS lawn tractor icon and start the simulator.
That's nice.
And then also there's another setup. You can plug in like an Arduino into your computer, and then you'll want to run this command here. And this dash device is mapping your Arduino. And so, for example, the use case here is you stick your Arduino into your computer, you wire in a servo and like a potentiometer. And then when you do that, this Docker container has Android on it. And it has the software that you download onto this device to control your servo. And then now when you run your joystick and you go left, right, the simulator will go left, right, but also this servo will go left, right. So you're just playing around with the messages inside of ROS, understanding that you can send commands, how to send commands in. You can send it in with a joystick, or you can turn this potentiometer knob. And then just to visualize, to see those changes as you're moving the joystick around, if you start this teleop program here, then your simulator will drive around, and then you'll also see in the physical world that you can turn things in the physical world. So that's really all this Docker container is supposed to do, is just a quick way to read in a sensor with ROS, control a servo with ROS, and a joystick with ROS, and then see the simulator run. That should take most people 6 months or a year.
That's nice.
But it would be helpful if, like, if you, or is there anything we should add to the Docker container, or if you can, have you tried it and does it work, and or what else would you do? Any suggestions? So there's this little GIF here that's run that kind of explains how these things works in an image. But then there's also a video on running the simulator here that talks about how to start the Arduino, how to download the software, and how this whole system works. And if you don't have Docker installed on your computer, then there's a link here to install Docker. And this should work on Windows, Mac, or Linux. The only thing I don't understand or know how this would work is if you're mapping your joystick. I think in Windows, your device location is probably different than on a Mac and a Linux. But I've never tried it, or I don't even know if it works.
So on I know on the new what's it called? Like Windows has Linux. It's is it called LTP, or I can't remember what it's called, but they're running a co-kernel of Linux on the 2020 release of Windows 10. And that makes Docker run natively on Windows machines. I believe that, and so what you do is, what I went ahead and got a preview release installed, and you do this update, and then you have to go to the Windows store and you download like Ubuntu. And so you basically run Ubuntu, but natively, the kernel runs natively in the Windows environment. So it's not like when you run Docker on anything but Linux, now you run a small VM to serve as that kernel. In this case, since you're running Linux, I think those devices might show up directly. So after 2020, I guess what I'm saying is that may not be a problem.
Okay. That should be much faster if you can run it directly. Less conflicts.
Should be faster. I don't know how much. I'm not sure that it'll be too much of a performance difference, but could be some.
Okay. Walter, any feedback from using the Docker container? And are you using it on Windows or Linux? Okay. Linux VM. Yep. I did install VS Code into the Docker, but we'll want to have like a little tutorial on sharing like a local directory with your container. But we can add to it. If people think that that format is okay, like if that Docker container works okay and that VNC is working, then we can start adding more functionality.
I know that the VNC is a little heavier weight, but I think it's probably more compatible with a lot of different systems because, like I said, on Monday I was trying to get Docker or X Windows to pop out of a container into using Xports as my server on a Mac, and I still struggled with that. So VNC, to run a VNC service within the container should be a lot easier than that. But the amount that you're using that VNC definitely will be a heavyweight process for usage. So like if you're just running things and don't need the visualization, maybe what I would suggest is having, like I was saying earlier, two Linux containers, one with just your core software that you might run on a tractor or such.
Yep.
That would have no graphical interfacing. And then you can set up your ROS master URI and ROS host or ROS IP to communicate with that. Or even if you're feeling a little crazy, you might try the ROS1 bridge and do ROS2 network instead.
I do. Yep. Now we get into Docker Compose, but I definitely want to try the two Docker containers running ROS1 and then using ROS2 to talk back and forth. I haven't done that yet, and I want to see how hard that is.
It's not too hard if you get the network set up right. And there's instructions. There is a method on how to do container on Docker Hub. The ROS. If you just Google Docker Hub and ROS, that's the one that has most of the Docker images. There's another one by OSRF that has like full desktop Docker images. So you have to distinguish the ROS is just like the core packages in that Ubuntu install, but the OSRF/ROS Docker Hub is desktop full. So you get RViz, RQT, and all that in there.
Yeah.
I've run ROS on a Pi, Walter, but I don't see any reason why you can't run ROS. I mean, a Pi is basically a very light on the power, full desktop computer. So there's no reason why you can't run ROS2 on it. Yeah, so that Linux kernel I was talking about is called WSL WSL2, and it uses hypervisor. Windows subsystem for Linux. I can never remember that. And that's supposed to be 2020, early 2020 release.
That's cool. So like running micro ROS on that ESP32, I think would be a good demo. The ESP32 and the STM boards running micro ROS.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out a use case. I think one of the confusing points is you're not going to run, like you're not going to take everything in your
workspace and shove it on there.
Yeah, you got to pick. Probably overwhelm it if you do much on there. So you gotta. I think that would be a compelling reason to start ROS2 is because if you're going to start to distribute your compute, if you consider like a standard robotic system and how much compute is off the laptop, then yeah, I mean, a lot of cases, I know there's some camera manufacturers that we were looking at recently, and they have like basically a Linux distro running on the camera to do on their IMX6 processor, and there's no reason why you can't, it had like a quad core ARM processor on there. There's no reason why you can't do quite a bit on that device.
Yep. I think it's impressive. I should have talked with those guys about hardware ROS. They weren't pushing that, and I wanted to see I don't know, I guess go to the embed group and start a conversation there about what that looks like.
Yeah, there's a posting, at least in discourse in the last 48 hours about hardware interfaces, and I hadn't looked at it too closely, but like I said, my view on it is that you start encouraging your hardware vendors to, when you buy something or you're engaged with somebody who is providing you a sensor and you're talking to their sales folks or something, and you say, hey, it would be so nice if you had ROS2 enabled on this device. And, like if you're looking at IMUs, there's already an IMU ROS message. GPS has its own GPS message. NEMA streams are okay, but if you got a ROS message right out of it, think of it this way: they're spending compute time to convert a solution from the GPS receiver into a NEMA stream, text. And then you're taking time to convert that NEMA stream into a ROS message. If you just had it straight out of the device in the normal format, you'd probably save some bandwidth. Compute bandwidth. You'd save, timing for one. The serialization and deserialization and reserialization of that data stream is kind of wasteful. So if you want higher performance, you're going to want a standardized message, and that would be cool. So yeah, the discourse, I didn't go back and look fully, but somebody was asking for standard messages from those, and I think they're better off saying, could you put ROS2 on that device? and then use the standard messages that ROS provides, and let me. I don't know if you know this, but like the service discovery feature in DDS for ROS2 would basically enable you for Ethernet-based devices to plug it in and immediately with zero configuration start getting published topic data from that device. So I don't know about serial-based devices, but those will probably have to remain. Those will probably have to remain as reading it from the serial port, but that's pretty low latency anyway to get off the serial port.
Yep. I like that. I'm looking forward to it. I was impressed with that Intel, the T265. They do all of that compute on board, and then you just output the data. And wasn't as easy as plug and play, but it's getting a lot better. And all of that's done on board.
Is that the RealSense camera?
Yeah, it's their tracking camera.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so that'd be great if especially, I know they have tons of, I mean, for $100 or $150, whatever it is now, that's a pretty impressive device. It's over USB, so I'm not sure DDS would be good, but if they got smart and went to, I mean, USB is only good on such a length, but, and in certain, pretty sure noisy environments probably wouldn't be so great, but I think they should, I would encourage them to go to Ethernet. But if they did that, then DDS would certainly be something they should consider ROS2.
And CAN for noisy, low bandwidth, or just stick with Ethernet?
Well, I think it depends on what amount of data you're trying to send and what your latency requirements are. But there seems to be a lot of capability in DDS that I'm learning now that I'm OCI. A lot of capability in DDS and for real-time systems, so using the network stack, and so yeah, I gotta learn more about that. So you have a T265?
Yeah.
What have you done with it? What's cool?
Got it working as a stereo camera. I thought that was pretty cool. It's terrible. It only sees like a meter. It's not meant for it, but it had 2 cameras, so I wanted to see that depth sensor. Done some small testing, but nothing. Haven't integrated it yet.
It seems like a lot of their. It's just for, oh, no, this is for robotics in general. A lot of people are RealSense fans. I'm not sure how much I am, having used it for a while. It's all right, but I guess it just depends on what you're trying to do.
Pick and place.
Yeah.
Is that too hard for it?
I don't know. It seems to be a lot noisier than some other like time of flight sensors. So I don't know. Like I said, it just depends on what you're trying to do, I think.
You still like the point grade cameras?
For 2D, they're all right. I think 2D's, it's pretty much whatever you want to use. I don't know that there's advantage to any one camera. They seem a lot alike. Point Gray and I forget the other one that we're using, but yeah, there's performance-wise, there's essentially no difference. That was human detectable. I'm sure if you put a scope on some signal, you could find microseconds or milliseconds of difference, but for human perception, it's not. There's no difference.
Yeah, maybe the Kinect, Walter was saying, wonder if the Kinect is better than the RealSense.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've used a Kinect. The RealSense, I'm pretty sure that the RealSense has for 2D. I mean, I'm pretty sure it has a higher resolution image capability than it's at least 1080. It might even be 4K. You have to look at the specs, but it has pretty good 2D imaging, pretty high frame rates. The Kinect's pretty old at this point. I think it was the Xbox One is like, I think it just made it up to 1080.
Any updates from the VR world?
I haven't been playing with VR. It's been a long time. I about a year ago, I got to play with well, we looked at the HoloLens. I know the HoloLens 2 is coming out for AR, and then the Magic Leap headset. I got a little 10-minute demo of that about a year ago, and I was blown away. I want one. I just haven't been able to convince myself that I actually need one.
Yeah.
I'm too pragmatic.
Yeah. I've been enjoying the Oculus Go for $200. I think it's a fair price and fun to see what's all going on inside of VR.
Yeah. I definitely think there are some use cases there shared with robotics, but it's kind of up to the hardware makers to make some compelling hardware. And I just read something that Apple is probably the one that's hyped a lot, because I read today that they have like the 10-year plan for getting out of iPhones and into the next thing. And this report claims that that's going to be some kind of XR, or virtual reality. Oh my God. Yeah, Walter, that's the one problem with RealSense and Kinect, is that for the world that you and I are familiar with, neither of those are qualifying as, I mean, it's not going to work in a field. It's not going to work on a tractor. It's not going to work well in a vibration environment. So high temp, I think all those problems are why it would be nice to experiment with a Kinect or a RealSense, but there's a point at which it's no longer viable. And I think that's when you want to use it for real, long-term rugged work.
It may be disposable at $200.
Yeah, I guess you could get a box full of them and just drop one in every time it blows up.
Yep. If it lasts a year or 2 years, maybe that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep. There was some, I went down the simulation track. This is going back in the conversation, but I do want to say there are some work going on in Gazebo and Ignite. And so you want to take a look at Ignite, and if you're interested in simulation, they're doing a lot of work there now.
So what is the, maybe you can answer this, but I was looking at the Ignite and I thought, oh, wow, you know, they're kind of doing a ROS2 for simulation, OSRF is, or open robotics. But what is the, it seems like what they're doing is basically splitting everything up. And what is the sales pitch here?
I don't know the Ignition library. I was going to post a link to it. I need to look more into how that works, but it seems like they're definitely doing kind of an overhaul of Gazebo. And then here's the link. So this is something to watch. This is the Ignition homepage about simulation.
I definitely think a lot of companies bypass the, I mean, they yeah. You said this before. I mean, on that homepage, it says fail early and fail fast. A lot of companies would rather fail on hardware, and I guess it seems easy to do that, but my goodness, there's so many, there's a multitude of reasons why to start with simulation. And I just don't understand why companies spend so much time trying to compete with real hardware. And there's so many pitfalls there. It's like, you know, it's like running a race that's almost stacked the deck against you. And simulation, I think they're afraid that it won't give accurate enough results for what they're doing, but you can go a long ways pretty far with a semi-decent simulation to kind of understand. And as you reach new problems, you know, if you spend, it's kind of like the technical debt, you know, in a different way, I guess you could think of it. But the debt here is that, you know, real hardware fails, motors burn out, you know, and what is your cost there? Every time something fails on that hardware, the amount of time it takes you to modify it and the amount of time it takes you to bring it back up or make another one, or if you got two people wanting to use the same system at the same time, all those costs add up, and nobody really in their mind sums that up into the impact to their program. But time and again, I've always seen companies, oh, well, we got this hardware and it's right here right now and it's the most accurate thing to do, but not investing the time in simulation, I think it's a huge pitfall for a lot of companies. So I think simulation's big. I worked on a program at L3 and I spent like 9 months just doing simulation. I never saw the real hardware, and lo and behold, it still worked. You know, so granted, it was not as complex as what some robotics applications are now, but it's still worthwhile to spend some time there.
Yep. Alan brings up a good point. You know, for reinforced learning, you want to do massive parallel simulations, and you don't have a simulator. How do you use the new tools that are coming out? I like a little bit of both, a little bit of simulation, a little bit of real world. Sometimes I get less motivated from doing simulation. It's not as fun, and it's cool to see the simulator do something versus your robot do something, but it is extremely valuable, the simulation time.
Yeah, there's a trapping there to get into the real world. And I can say it's very compelling just to, you know, once you see the real robot working, just to work directly on that and kind of never look back at simulation. But I think if you keep a reasonable balance, then that's good.
Is it the same reason why people will code live on a real robot?
Change variables while it's running down the. Yeah.
Yep. That's the
We've never seen that fail, right?
Nope. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. No. This winter, since I'm in the north, I need to spend more time on the simulation. So I'm working on collecting some measurements. I want to plot some of these fields and get the right dimensions. And then it's like, you know, -10 and cold and windy and snowy. So I think that's good motivation to spend some time on getting the simulator working and getting the packages and then running the tests there.
Good plan.
Yep.
What is he talking about?
You took yourself off mute, Walter.
I think he's losing his mind.
He said he's in the air, in a flight.
Oh.
So before we're done, I'll just make a comment. We're talking about connecting little modules together with networks, and Matt keeps saying he wants to go to CAN. Well, I'm thinking about going to RS-485. So you'll have about the same complexity. Instead of putting a CAN transceiver, you put an RS-485 transceiver, and it'll take 1 UART per module. So it just matter wiring the two together and then writing up whatever small driver it takes to. You can have to make like a master-slave type protocol between them, but I'm thinking about going that way. So basically, I'll just have to dedicate 1 UART per module instead of going back to my main board and have to put, say 6 UARTs to talk to all my little modules. So that's what I was doing, and I found this. I found this on eBay. It turns out there's everybody's selling the same module, and they're 5 modules for $5 with free shipping. So I decided I couldn't pass that up. So I got some of those on order, and I'll see if those work out and how well that's going to work. And I've done this before with RS-45, and it seems to work. Seems to work quite well, and it should work in it should work with in noisy environments. It should have the same kind of noise rejection that CAN has. And some people actually use a CAN transceiver and hook that up to a UART and do the same thing. So that's another option too. So I just wanted to get that in before we're done here.
So they go UART to CAN and then UART on the other side. And then so on the computer side, is it just serial?
Does who do what?
I don't know. You said something.
I said if you want to, you could just put a CAN transceiver right on your TTL UART pins. And instead of being RS-45, it comes out as CAN. And the only real difference is that you have, when I say CAN, I'm talking about the voltage levels. And the thing is RS-45 has a transmit enable pin, and CAN does not. So basically, if you say transmit on CAN, it pulls the line low and takes over. So you could do either. You could put either kind of transceiver on there, and you still have a twisted pair. You still need to terminate it at both ends. So it still works out physically the same. And I think it'll be that the noise immunity should be basically the same on either type of thing you're using.
Okay, what's the motivation to go to 485?
Well, for one thing, because I'm in a noisy environment. Number two, I can put I can do a multi-drop on the same wire, hook all my modules together, and because I really don't want to use CAN is my main objective on that. It's kind of like the same reason I don't want to use USB on a microcontroller if I don't have to. If you get a bare microcontroller, it's got a USB peripheral, and you load in 50K of code just to talk to that UART or talk to the CAN or talk to the USB port, and then I have no idea how it's working. I tried to do this once a long time ago, and it's just tons and tons of code there, and there's this big table about here's all these error conditions that can happen. I had no idea what to do with all that stuff. So if I've got a UART, I know how to handle that. You say initialize it, and you say send a byte, and it transmits it, and I can understand that. I've got that stuff figured out.
Okay.
So I'll just have to see if I can get this. I think I can get this around the ST micro parts, which are 3.3 volt parts, and because they're all 5 volt tolerant. So if the 3.3 volt output will drive the inputs of these little converter modules, then coming back in, I'll just connect it, and they're 5 volt tolerant. So I'll see if I can use these. Otherwise, it really just takes a single chip, just an 8-pin chip, to do this. But here they've got them on a board with connectors and a bunch of other crap for $1 a piece. So I figured that's gonna be easier. Just get those and wire them up and try them out and run it that way. So I'll let you know how that works out.
Awesome. That'll be an interesting test. Just rebooted there. Is there anything else for the meeting tonight?
Not for me.
All right. Well, it's good talking. Hope you guys have a great week. And Jim, good luck out there in the harvest. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right, see ya.
Mhm.